Thank you to all of you to be here in our opening of the webinar series on greening research talks. Our first topic is sustainability strategies in research organizations. And we already have our panelists with us today. So we will start with Joe and Martin from UKRI. Joe is head of sustainability policy and engagement, and Martin is associate director of environmental sustainability. So they will start, they will have 15 minutes, after which Christian Jörg from the German Research Foundation and program director will follow with her presentation. And last but not least, Paula Leskin from the Research Council of Finland, UKRI, and science advisor will close with the final presentation, and this should give us 15 minutes for questions and answers. So if everybody is already in their place, which I suppose all attendees are already online, I would give the stage to Joe from UKRI to start our session. Is that okay, Joe?
Absolutely. Do you want to drop your slides down and I'll do mine?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see those okay?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks for having me here. As Margarita says, my name's Joe Allett. For anyone who's not aware, UKRI is a UK government body that funds quite a large proportion of the UK's research and innovation. We're an umbrella body. We've got a whole family of thematic research councils that sit under that umbrella. So environmental sustainability has played a key strategic role in UKRI for several years now. At a corporate level, we've included our public commitment to deliver. We've included our public commitment to deliver sustainability in our strategies. And this is partly driven by UKRI government targets and also reporting commitments. So we have the Greening Government commitment, but there's also a number of targets to follow. But there is also a recognition in UKRI that we should follow the science that we fund as our response to climate change. In 2020, we published an environmental sustainability strategy as an organisation, and we formed an environmental sustainability programme team, of which Martin and I are key members of. So we're committed to reducing our carbon emissions, scope 1 and 2, and we're starting to look at scope 3, but I'm going to leave that for Martin to touch on more in his piece. The 2040 target was determined following science-based targets, and it's about 10 years ahead of the UK government commitment, but we're also committed to reducing our non-carbon footprint, the other environmental impacts, and demonstrating our leadership in environmental sustainability and influencing where we can. That's the setting the standard bit. Our strategy is actually up for renewal this coming year. We'll be reviewing our progress and drafting a new strategy later this year. We're still aiming for our 2040 net zero target, but we'll be looking to have a much shorter document going forwards with a greater focus on our vision, our goals as a funding body, and the objectives will be more placed in a separate action plan document. So today I wanted, as my part of this presentation, to share with you some of the progress that we've been making with setting the standard and how we're influencing the sector in the UK. 2 years ago, working with my colleagues in UKRI, we started a journey of engagement and collaboration with sector stakeholders. And it was with an aim to find shared solutions for sector-wide change around embedding sustainability. It became really apparent quite soon after that journey started that sustainability in research actually meant two different things. There was doing research to solve sustainability, and then doing research in a sustainable way. But sometimes the language was crisscrossing over when people talked about this. Now, obviously, our research and innovation plays a really critical role in understanding how our planet is changing and how we address the challenges that we're faced. But it was agreed that we all need to recognise that every activity we undertake has its own impact on the environment. And solving sustainability is not a get out of jail card for having that footprint within our research and innovation. So we decided that we would focus our collaborative work on the sustainability of research and innovation practice. And we identified that change was needed at multiple levels, from leadership and strategic change right down to individuals and their behavioural change. But of course, the whole time whilst delivering world-class research and providing the funding for it. So we collaboratively developed a concordat. So fundamentally, it's a framework for action that commits signatories to recognise the need for change and how we conduct research and innovation, but also how commits them to take action. This was published in April this year. UKRI are a signatory to it and have been since day one, and there's 18 other organisations, a mixture of higher education, institutes and funders that also became signatories from day one. And that list we're hoping will grow over time. But the impact from this concordat is already starting to show. So 2 of the other funders, I will note they are charities, not government, but they've responded to the concordat by putting the concordat into their policy documents. So they now say that an organisation has to be a signatory to the concordat in order to receive funding at any level. So even if someone was applying just for a fellowship, their organisation would need to be a signatory. This is Wellcome Trust, who obviously aren't just UK based, and Cancer Research UK. This is something that we don't require, and at the moment there isn't an appetite for us to put it into our policies, but we would never say never to that. We're aiming for a more carrot approach, and this is a voluntary agreement, but it might be that over time we need to respond with something firmer as a funder, or if the sector, I don't know, asks us for it. So I'm not going to lie and say that it was really easy writing a collaborative document with multiple stakeholders that was aimed not just at higher education, but at the entire research and innovation sector. It was an ambitious challenge, and we didn't take it lightly rising to it. It took a huge amount of time and a huge amount of patience. You cannot be precious with your words at all, and expect that every iteration probably will change largely things throughout the document. But I think the results are worth it. And there's a lot to be said for having the patience to do collaborative working in order to have the impact and buy-in across the sector. So I'm stepping ahead. So I'm going to hand over to Martin now, who is going to give you a little bit more insight into some of the other environmental sustainability approaches that we've got in UKRI.
Great. So thanks for that, Jill. My name is Martin Farley, already mentioned. I just want to take a step and look at what we've been doing around UKRI and some of the other activities. And just to mention very quickly is to highlight that UKRI is a government funder, and we fund over £8.5 billion per annum in a variety of research types. And it's worth mentioning that UKRI is not a charity, it's government, but also I think it's quite interesting that as a funder, we also have quite a few of the research institutes that we fund directly. So it's not just the activity of our funding operations, but it's also the research institutes that we operate ourselves, which puts us in a not completely unique situation, but an interesting challenge of how do we impact both our funding operations as well as the institutes that we own and run. Next slide, please. So where are we so far? Jill mentioned that net zero target of 2040. This is against our baseline year of 2017 to 18. And this is really in focus on that in the infrastructure that I mentioned, so the institutes that we have. Actually, we've just had some updated figures, and we haven't updated these yet publicly. We're just finalizing the figures still. But you can see that thus far we've reduced our emissions in terms of scopes 1 and 2 and 3 is only business travel, by the way. But scopes 1 and 2 in terms of our energy consumption is around, well, scope 1 is down 11%, and scope 2, our electricity is down 58%. Our air travel overall has reduced, but it has been increasing again since COVID, albeit we might have seen a dip since in this year. Our water usage is down from our baseline year, and our waste has been going down as well with our recycling usage has been going up. So some good progress overall, but a fair bit of work to do still. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of achieving net zero, it's no easy task, but I think it's important to highlight that a lot of great work has been done, and a lot of that involves, actually looking at the cost associated with it. So that's doing the actual plans that are required to change the estate to net zero. A lot of those plans have taken place. And we are reliant on quite a few assumptions. In particular, we need to ensure that new facilities are going to be achieving net zero. And of course, one of the biggest ones is that the grid continues to decarbonize at the plan that the UK government has, which is some might consider it's a challenging area, but we are quite reliant on it to an extent as part of our plans. But we have the commitment, and so what's left is for us to actually go and do it. Next slide, please. We have these, yes, check marks here. So one thing I want to mention as well, so a lot of the net zero discussion is focused on scopes 1 and 2 of emissions, but we've just recently completed a scope 3 assessment for UKRI, and this is the first that we were able to do this, first time we were able to do this. And this looked at our funded operations as well as our supply chain impacts, which was a really interesting exercise. And we're intentionally not sharing figures yet, in part because we're still completing the report, but also one of the main learnings from this was that this was not a simple exercise. We had to slightly vary our methodologies, and if any organization has done this, I mentioned that UKRI funds billions of pounds per annum. So understanding the impact of that is not a simple task. And one of the learnings as well was that we can't necessarily repeat it easily yet. We are looking at to help us with our net zero target implementing a carbon budget though, and we were considering the feasibility of including scope 3, and at least for now that doesn't look like an easy thing to do, in part because we need to be able to measure it. But there are ways that we can look at mitigation around our full impact as a funder. I wanted to give an example there, and I know that the next webinar is around net zero digital infrastructure, but I wanted to give a shout out to one of the projects that's going on from NERC, which is around net zero digital infrastructure. Next slide, please. So how can we support our community? Well, from the MRC, we did a landscape review, and there was some interesting findings from that, which is that the community essentially wants to be engaged around environmental sustainability. And I'd really encourage you to check that out, as well as other landscape reviews that have taken place. So the Wellcome Trust also did a pretty interesting landscape review on environmental sustainability, which I think is worth a look. But we're investigating how we can work with our community essentially to mitigate the impacts as much as possible of research moving forward. And that involves looking at tools and standards that the community use. And that's a direct way of actually addressing this, because of course, we fund operations, but we don't necessarily house them. A lot of that takes place in the institutes. And I think part of that is addressed by what Joe is discussing with the Concordat. Next, and I think one of our final slides. Now, I wanted to mention where we can go from this, and I've put here a workshop that just took place actually last week in Germany, and I can actually see in some of the chats some of our colleagues that were there with us at this event, and it was genuinely fantastic. It was an event looking at what funders can do around environmental sustainability, and it was kind of a first of its kind event, and it was a really exciting opportunity to hear from other funders what they had been doing and what we potentially might do together. And I guess I just wanted to say from UKRI, our message is let's work together in this space. The funding environment is an extremely complicated one, particularly between different funders and the requirements we have, excluding environmental sustainability, but just in terms of the grant requirements and etc. So if we were to align our efforts together, it would make it easier for the research community to address environmental sustainability moving forward. So if you're interested, oh, yes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, perfect. I'm just about there. So I'll just even give you a minute back probably, but I'll say that if you are interested in this topic, please do get in touch. Would encourage you to reach out to the EMBO organizers or ourselves about how we can collaborate in this area, because really, if we work together in this, we can make it easier on the research community and have a greater impact altogether. But yeah, I will leave it there and give you a minute back. Last slide, you can see our contact details. And thank you very much to the organizers, Science Europe, for putting together this fantastic event, and look forward to everything that comes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. Absolutely on time. So we will have some time for questions, and now we just move now with Christian Jörg.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I try to share my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
I guess. That's great. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to present the DFG activities in terms of sustainability. But before I start with the core topic, I'd like to shortly introduce the German Research Foundation, the DFG. So that's in fact the central and the largest funding organization in Germany. We have a budget of about, we have a budget of about 3.5 billion euro annually. And that's all public money, comes from the taxpayer. Nevertheless, we are scientifically independent, we are politically independent, we are organized under private law, and that's why this independence comes from. But again, it's all public money. So we fund proposals from all disciplines, from the science to humanities. The only requirement is that it should be knowledge-driven research, so sort of basic or fundamental research. We also cover, we are covering proposals for all career stages, starting with the PhD to the very advanced and senior researchers. And we also fund individual proposals, individual projects, but we also fund large research centers, like collaborative research centers or research training groups. Then we have we do a lot for the international scientific landscape. So we are part of a lot of associations like Belmont Forum, like Transatlantic Platform, like GRC, and so on. So that's an important task for the DFG to be part of this international networks. And last but not least, we have also a stake in the policy arena in Germany. So when it comes to science research related topics, then the DFG is always invited to give their contributions or to give its statements. So that's very short to the DFG. Then I turn to the sustainability topic. Maybe just to start with, sustainability is an issue the DFG has been dealing with quite a long time. So first of all, of course, we fund research that is related to the SDGs, that is related to sustainable development. According to a very rough analysis, we saw that around 20% of all projects have a certain relation to the SDGs. Then also related to research for sustainability, we have a German Committee for Sustainability Research. That's part of the International Future Earth Network. I guess some of you are familiar with this very large platform or network. So that's another line of action in terms of sustainability. Then second point, we try to run our head office in a more sustainable way. So we implemented a lot of different measures to get our carbon footprint to keep it low. And we also measure our carbon footprint, and we have it all on our website, and everyone can look it up, what we are doing in this direction. But I think that's not the point for today's talk. What I'd like to bring to your attention is another aspect of sustainability, and this relates to the research processes themselves. So it's all about resource saving, use of material, equipment, infrastructure. It's about emission reducing methodology, and of course it's about travel policy, so adequate behavior or adequate scientific exchange patterns. So that's the idea. And in order to green our research, our funded research processes, we tried to do some very solid preparation and foundation, so to speak. It means we set up a specific commission on sustainable research practices. And this commission involved 20 members, 20 scientific members. And with this membership, we tried to cover all scientific disciplines. And we also invited law people. And law people, in order to be on the safe side when it comes to our constitutional act, the Act of Scientific Freedom, which is the basis for all our funding, for all our research activities. So every researcher is free to choose about methods, about research goals, and so on. And that this law is really basic, and it's laid down in our constitution. The idea of this commission was to develop approaches on how to deal with the sustainability issue across all disciplines, and how to arrive at some sorts of standard setting for resource saving behavior, for emission reducing practices, and in the end to have climate neutral research practices. This commission ran over 1 year, and then finally came up with a recommendation paper, which then was discussed by our regular decision-making bodies, which is the DFG Senate, but also by our 50 disciplinary review boards. And they all brought in very specific perspectives from their different disciplines. So it was a really intense discussion, and it was really exciting to see what different ideas and thoughts came on the table. But in the end, the recommendation paper was changed a bit, and then finally was endorsed by all DFG members, and is now part of our regular funding process. So in terms of this recommendation paper, which is really guiding our practices right now. So the content, you can load it down from our website. It's in English and in German. So the very basic decision was to set the focus in the paper and in the practice on the ecological dimension of sustainability, and apart from social and economic dimension, because we thought that climate change and resource saving practices that are pressing issue, very urgent, and that's why the focus was set on the ecological dimension. So generally spoken, all recommendations are led by the idea that we would like to call for a cultural change in thinking and practicing towards climate neutrality and resource saving behavior. On the other side, as I already mentioned, we have to respect the freedom of research, and that's why the funding criterion for proposals is still first and foremost the scientific quality, and the scientific quality decides upon funding. So that's still the case. But behind this background, the DFG decided to implement sustainability considerations in the application process. Means addressing all applicants by asking them to reflect on sustainable issues in their applications or in their proposals. And this applies to each proposal across all of our funding programs, and this will become mandatory as of September this year, so 2024. It is a requirement, and every applicant is not only encouraged, but need to consider this sustainable issues in their proposals. So to make it more concrete, we included a certain paragraph in our guidelines. And applicants, as I already said, are required to write something. And if there is nothing written in the proposal, we give back the proposals and again ask the applicants to fill out this specific paragraph. Moreover, we added the sustainability requirement to the reviewers guideline, inviting reviewers to comment on the applicants' considerations in their proposals. However, it's important to note at this time that these considerations are not taken as a regular assessment criterion, so it's just meant as a sort of plausibility check for the time being. By implementing these sustainability aspects in the application process, I think we definitely try to reach a high level of awareness among academic communities, starting really from the bottom by addressing each applicant. But in turn, we thought we have to support our applicants to do these sustainable considerations. And in order to do so, we built up a sort of landing page at our homepage. And this landing page is a work in progress, so to speak, and should comprise all relevant information for the applicants. First of all, we early came up with a catalog of questions on sustainability, and this catalog of questions should support and guide the applicants to think about resource saving practices, saving patterns, and should guide the applicants in order to be able to fill out the application form. That means the guiding questions refer to, of course, travel activities, refer to experimental design, to materials, to consumables that are used, and also to supply chain, equipment, infrastructure, and so on. Still in progress, we think of a collection of best examples for resource-saving approaches. But as we experience, that's not that an easy task, and we are still we are not still there, but we are trying our best to get this collection done. Yeah, we keep up with this task, and perhaps to add, we regard the whole implementation process as a learning process. And this applies not only for the applicants, it applies also for the reviewers and for the DFG review boards and for the Senate, and not at least for the head office. Then I forgot to mention that we are also willing to cover additional funds. So if there is methodology that that is more emission reducing, and that is more expensive than a traditional one, we were able, or we are willing to cover this additional money in order to promote these sustainable practices. Then a view on the next steps. We think about or we thought we should organize several workshops in order to get the communities together and to discuss the perspective, the challenges that are connected to the sustainability issues in the different disciplines. We also think of checking and analyzing incoming proposals as of September this year, and then analyze according the outline considerations in terms of sustainability in order to get some grasp of what the different communities come up with different ideas. We also thought of 1 minute. We also thought of possible calls for original research on sustainable practices, for example, in terms of methods, materials, or maybe energy-saving equipment. These are the activities we are think of for the next, I don't know, 1 or 2 years. But then we are completely aware that there are considerable differences between the discipline when it comes to sustainability aspects. For example, my field is economics, and there are probably limited options to contribute to sustainable research practices. We know, maybe my last point, also important to mention, we are in close collaboration with the universities, in particular with the Association of German Universities, that's the Rectors Conference, and that is because we all know that a lot of sustainable practices like infrastructure and so on, this is not the responsibility of each single applicant, but that's foremost in the responsibility of the universities. And therefore, we try to get common strategies coming from the applicants, coming from above, from the universities, and then to agree on common strategies for greening research activities. I think that's it. From the DFG perspective, I think I've covered the most important points for the time being. And again, it's an ongoing process, and we are happy to keep you updated about our progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christian. As well, in a very well pace, we move now to Paula, and then we will have our opportunity to talk a bit about the several strategies that we are learning from all of you. So, Paula.
Thank you. My apologies. I mentioned earlier that I'm a bit of a Zoom beginner, but we'll see. Here we are. Can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon on my behalf as well. My name is Paula Leskinen, and I work as a senior science advisor here at the Research Council of Finland. It's my pleasure to be here. And my main tasks here entail working on reporting, which is maybe the angle I'm slightly looking at in my presentation this afternoon. And I lost the share, did I?
Yes, I think that if you go to the icon on top, the one in the middle, if you the other one in the middle, yeah,
here.
Though it's in,
oh
yes,
just that's it. Yay! Thank you. Okay. So first, a few words about the Research Council of Finland. I'll use the abbreviation RCF henceforth, at least in most of my slides. So we're a government agency. We're the largest public funder in Finland, and we're governed by the Ministry of Education, Science and Culture, which then also frames gives the framework within which we operate. And we're an expert organization in science and research, and of course our main or what we are best known for is the research funding, which is also then what gives leverage in having an impact on the way things are done. I pulled up our year in figures from last year, 2023. I won't go into that, but that's just to give you an idea of the volume. And we recently launched a new strategy. The slogan goes for bold research for Finland and the world. And the thing I wanted to bring up here was this mission part that you can see on the left. So the mission is to open up new avenues for excellent, responsible, and high impact research. And this then entails the responsible part. One of many things that it covers is, of course, sustainability as well. So it's within our strategy, deep there. And then another thing that also affects how we operate or how we look at this is that we have a performance agreement between the ministry, which is sort of what we promised to deliver. It's a 4-year agreement. And within, I've pulled up the part that's relevant now for this afternoon, is that the sustainable development is a main component there. So if you look at the bullet points, we have a responsible science should be a result of what we do. And then bullet number 2 pulls up sustainable development, and this should be taken into account in all projects we fund. And then we are also obligated to monitor how publications link to the SDGs. And finally, we are expected to produce a sustainability report annually. And this is work that's done by a sustainability team, if you wish, that works here within the administration office. So what do we think about accountability? So this is where, of course, it also includes many things listed here. But the thing maybe is that we seek in everything we do to make accountability and responsible conduct an integral part of both what we fund, of course, and also our internal operations here. And this is something that then I used as the framework. I'll say a few words about of what we can say or what we're able to do about the environmental impact of the research we fund. And then I'll also say a few words, which is not the main point here, but how we take into account the environmental impact of the internal operations here. So first, a few words about the research funded, maybe perhaps slightly in contrast to the previous presenters. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have a role. We can't. Research organizations, so universities, research institutes, universities of applied sciences, they have their own strategies for how they measure footprint and how they make their operations more sustainable. And we don't have a role in that directly. But what we do, of course, in addition to then maybe implementing rules and guidelines through calls, is that we monitor the accountability of the funded research projects from the reports that we get once the projects are finished. And to give a very concrete, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. So of course, the one way to affect this is through direct calls. And we recently measured this, how much funding has been allocated to climate change and carbon neutrality. And it's 50 to 60 million euros per year. This is directly through calls that are directed at climate change or then indirectly in bottom-up calls where a project that is focused on these aspects has been funded or through a link. And then additionally, we have these flagships and centers of excellence that are directed towards working on these issues. But to make things very concrete, if the way our academy project funding is a basic tool we have for professors and postdoctoral researchers to get a project funding. So the sustainable development in your application, you have to bring forth which sustainable development objectives you will meet in your research. This is also the reviewers are requested to comment on this. And finally, my main area of interest, the reporting, is that you are asked to explain this. Here, the bottommost bullet you can see is in how your work affected the environment and natural resources. And now it's maybe noteworthy here that you are free to choose one or several of these. So obviously, these are not all directly related to the environment, and we're working to develop this a bit. I'll say a few words in it on this down the line. And a second example I pulled up is from research infrastructure funding. This is a quote from our president for research here, that we've seen that research infrastructures are also, because they're such big facilities, typically they can play a major role in working towards more sustainable research. And this is something that has been maybe the most concrete examples on how we have influenced the way things are done through our funding instruments is in the research infrastructure field. This is the same list of things. I won't read them through to you, but fundamentally this was introduced to us through the RR Recovery and Resilience Funds initially, where the green transition was, as you will be aware, a very strong aspect. And now that's sort of trickled down into the research as a regular component of what we ask for in the application. And so the people applying for the funding or the research infrastructures really need to make a point or explain how they'll take into account sustainability in what they do. And this is not so much, of course, if your research infrastructure produces data on environmental issues, global warming, this is okay. But the point is more, of course, in say when you purchase a new instrument, how do you take into account recyclability, for example? And a few years ago, I think last year or the year before, we had a look at what the research infrastructures listed as their actions towards sustainability during their funding period. And these are here in decreasing order. So the ones at the top were the most common, and then running down. And I think one of the previous speakers mentioned as well, a fundamental aim of asking this is, of course, also getting people to think about it. I think that's really key in making a change. So when you're forced to think about what you can do, then slowly, hopefully, it sort of becomes really a part of how you work. And we acknowledge, of course, that, say, for research infrastructures, one that was built in the 80s will be at a different position versus one that's being set up now when we do the review. So then reporting, my favorite part, so this is now where we're currently looking. Also, sustainability is a central part of how this will, of the development work. So we're seeking to have a very much renewed reporting system in 2025, both, well, never mind. And one of the things we will integrate into the report that the researcher or applicant, beneficiary maybe, has to fill in is that what was the environmental impact of the project activities? So this is something we've not asked for before, that it's been only these 5 categories I showed you earlier, one of which was environmental impact. And a second development that will occur is that the impact of the projects funded will be very much more strongly tied to the SDGs. And then just two slides on the administration office. So this is our office here, the white building in the center on the left. And of course, a major development, as has been with many other funders as well, that we, after the pandemic, we shifted to mainly online valuation panels, which, well, there are some problems, but it's a massive sustainability change for the better. And of course, it's quite strict when we get to travel and when not. Maybe I won't go through all of these, but a big part is also upgrading our skills and competence. So there's really effort on training us here at the Research Council to better be able to take into account these, how sustainability could be incorporated better into our day-to-day work, as well as into how we run our calls and funding instruments. And I think I won't go into this so much. I think I'll close with this. Thank you very much for your attention. So here are my contact details. If you wish to get in touch, please do.
Thank you so much, Paula. We all much appreciate everybody's contribution with their talks today, and we have been receiving a couple of questions already on our chat. So I think I will just bring these forward. Okay. One is already to all presenters from Nicola Cosgrove. So, and quoting, do you have dedicated teams in your agency leading on sustainability, developing strategy plans and implementing them? So if you would like to bring a feedback on this, UKRI, DFVG, EKA.
Could speak quickly for UKRI and say we do have our own team, and as mentioned, Joe and I are on that team, and then just as well, with the complexity of UKRI, there are several councils that have their own infrastructure, as mentioned, and those councils have their own dedicated teams as well to deal with the complexity. So those councils would be the STFC, MRC, and NERC, or NERC for short.
Maybe I can follow up.
Yes.
I already replied in the chat, but nonetheless, according to the different dimension of sustainability, we have different teams that are responsible or in charge of it. So there's a running sustainable head office. So the administration things, that is one team that is in charge. Then we have a team on research culture, and sustainable practice is part of the research culture, and they are also responsible to bring the questions what I was talking about into the guidelines. That's the task of the research culture team, and then looking at the different perspectives from the different disciplines, that's the responsibility of a cross-cutting working group. And there are members of the head office that are responsible for the different disciplines. So I would say it's a complex thing, like you already said, and that's why the responsibilities are a bit of split up across the head office of the DFG.
Thank you, Christian. So Paula, you want to bring
Yes,
a
thank
comment
you.
as well?
Just briefly, we have a team of I think there's 6 of us here that work on sustainability issues or are responsible for these issues within our office. Maybe it's been for the most part for the sustainability reporting and training. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's, okay. So this one is directed to Christian from Fennec Blom. Is the catalog of questions openly available? It sounds like a great source of inspiration. Christian, would you like to bring a comment?
Yes, it's on my slides. There is a link to it, so it's on our webpage, and you can look it up, and it's on my slide. It's, I don't know, maybe number 6 or so. If you provide the slides or the presentations to all of our participants, then it's in there.
Okay, thank you so much, Christian. And still to you from Ruben van Holm. So he brings forward a challenge. Challenge the statement that sustainability is more evident in some disciplines than in others. So you gave an example in economics, but isn't there just a lot of potential around sustainability with economics and finance?
Yes, again, it's me. I was, as I was writing, I was just referring to ecological sustainability in my presentation. And I think in terms of this, the social sciences are not the ones that are really responsible. Okay, we have the travel patterns, and there might be some options to reduce emissions. But if you think of geosciences or engineering sciences, I think these are the very relevant and important disciplines that have to think of materials, of equipment, or if you think of computer sciences, of calculation, of models, of simulation, there are a lot of energy consuming practices. And that's why I said economics or social sciences are not the most relevant ones. But if you speak of economic sustainability, then of course finance and economics, that's very understandable or very plausible to talk about this. So it depends on the dimension of sustainability you are talking about.
Thank you. Now for Paula from Eleni Zika, will the reporting requirement in relation to SDGs and environment impact be linked to interim payments for projects, or is this an independent process?
I'm sorry, what entering payment to the,
so
can you please repeat the payment part? Yes.
So basically, reporting in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals and environmental impacts be linked to interim payments for projects? Or
yes, interim. Sorry, that was the word. No. So the thinking is that it will be integrated into the final project. Final report. So once the project is finished, so not in the interim stage. No, thank you.
Okay, and now for all of our speakers from the book, will you ask applicants to report on carbon dioxide emission and climate impact according to CSRD?
I could say from UKRI, we do report on emissions, and we follow the green government's commitment. So it's we follow standards set by the UK government, and so I think we do meet those requirements.
Thank you.
Was the question more targeted as, are we going to ask individual applicants though, rather than what we're doing as an organisation? Is that correct?
yeah, will you ask applicants to report on CO2 emissions and climate impact?
Yeah, no, I will respond to that actually, because this is something that we've long debated, and the UK government actually has quite strong feelings about this at the moment, that there's a lot of bureaucracy associated with asking applicants for that, depending on what decision we're going to make. So if we're asking for that data but we don't do anything with it, then obviously it's a huge amount of unnecessary bureaucracy. So, you know, we don't want to go into that lightly. The other thing I think we need to say is one of the reasons why we've done the Concordat approach in UKRI is because we need to be quite careful in asking applicants to do things, to submit CO2 things and then making decisions about that when it's not within the applicant's gift to be able to make those changes. So for instance, the infrastructure may not be within their control. So I think it's really important that when we think about introducing that, we're not restricting the science or the research and innovation without putting in place things to ensure that actually the applicants can follow through with the sustainability.
Thank you. And okay, our chat is quite rich in questions, and we have one here which is direct to all. So how do you distinguish greenwashing from truly contributing to sustainability? In what researchers write in their proposals? Seems very challenging. So let's how would you address this wording versus true sustainability?
Well, I can give it a go if that's okay. Well, we request the panelists to examine this. We've also, this is something we've thought about, is to have someone, a sustainability expert who actually looks at this component. So somebody who perhaps has the know-how, but admittedly it's not a simple question. I don't have the answer. And to be honest, we haven't actually, we've recognized, say, research infrastructure applications are the field I'm most familiar with, recognized the phenomenon. But I still argue that also getting people into that mind shift, even if it begins with greenwashing, then ideally it leads to something, but it not easy in some. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Just
yes.
jump quickly.
Sure.
Just part of it too, I think, is by hopefully, well, you can provide training for those that are assessing and having an expert, as well as providing standards and principles of standards that make it so that before it comes to the panel, that in part a certain standard has been reached, and you can try to, for example, ensure that those standards include things like principles that avoid greenwashing, let's say. And I think there are ways to do that, although we still need to work on developing them.
Thank you, Martin. All right, so we are heading to our to 2 o'clock, but not before finishing our webinar. It would be great to have a take-home message from each of you, and next future steps that you find to be important in setting up and moving forward with a sustainability strategy. So maybe I'll just start with UKRI, Martin and Joe, which would be your take-home message?
Go quickly, and then Joe, I don't know if you want to say something, but I'll just say that I think as funders, we need to come together and develop principles of what we want from the sector, and to make it as easy as possible for those trying to achieve this.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we just need to not give people who are doing climate change research a get out of jail card to say, you know, they're solving sustainability, so it doesn't matter how big their footprint is. We all need to work together to reduce the footprint of the research and innovation that we do, whatever the topic. And if we're also solving climate change and sustainability while we're doing them, that's brilliant.
Thank you, Joe. Christian, would you like to?
Yeah, I thank you.
Your view
I
as
think
well.
we are all beginners in this matter, and that's why I find it very interesting to learn from each other and to listen to the presentation from Finland and from UKRI. And I think we are all on the same page, so we have to learn and improve our practices. And the only thing is that there is no golden way out of the sustainability challenges, and that's why we should look for best practices and should look at the practices of the others and then learn from each other. That would be my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't mean to plagiarize, but I was going to say the sharing of best practices across research funders is really key. This has been very interesting. Thank you. And also, well, working together, I guess that goes hand in hand. That would be my take home. Lots to learn, and good if everyone doesn't invent the wheel on their own, but we can do it together. And also makes it easier for the researchers then if there's a set of shared standards. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I think we just started our webinar series in a very fruitful way with many interactions from our audience as well. And I would like very much to thank everybody for their availability and commitment to be here and sharing their experience and know-how in such a short time, 15 minutes. It's quite some time to condensate, quite hard work in this subject. So as Nicola was just putting here in the chat, do register for our next webinars. Nicola, do we want to give some words as well?
Yes, thanks, Margarita. Thanks to all participants and speakers. The next webinar will be next week on Tuesday, same time, same place, and the topic is greening digitalizations for research. So on behalf of Science Europe and all the members that are co-organizing this event, thank you all. We hope to see you next week.
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.